Joining us now is Sanjeev Sanyal, economist, author and member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Mr. Sanyal, good morning to you and thank you for your time here on India Today. What kind of change do you expect from the announcements made last night?
Well, you have to know a little bit of the history. So when GST was introduced in 2017, what happened is that most of the rates and slabs were equivalent to whatever existed earlier. So some changes were made, but the idea was really to take everything onto the new system with the least amount of disruption. So there wasn't a first principles look at why some rate was at certain level. It just was a carryover from whatever existed earlier. So now that the system has worked now for 8 good years, the idea here is that, look, now we need to go back to first principles and see, for example, why a certain rate is at a certain level and so on. And of course, generally to simplify and bring the whole level down. So that is basically the idea. And you will have seen that, for example, things like cement have now come into a much lower slab. It was a repeated complaint earlier. Food items of various kinds have either gone into a much lower slab or completely eliminated from the GST system, and so on and so forth.
Okay, and Mr. Sanyal, since you speak about 8 years, the former finance minister, Mr. P. Chidambaram, has said that these reforms are 8 years too late. And while making the announcements, the current finance minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, too, had said that Prime Minister had been pushing her for a few months. So the question is this a case of too much too late?
No, I mean, the fact of the matter is, you see, shifting from the old complicated system that you will remember in 2017 was no small feat. And many countries that have attempted to do this have had years of economic turmoil. So we shifted it with the idea that, look, cause the least amount of disruption possible. I mean, it's still disruptive, but cause the least amount of disruption possible and shift onto a new system, which we did. And then it took us some time to stabilize it as well. And then we fixed quite a lot of things along the way. So it's not like the system we introduced in 2017 is the system that we are now fixing. So iteratively, we fixed a lot of things. But then the idea came that, look, now that the system is reasonably stable, we genuinely understand how it works. Because remember, there are all kinds of issues of cascading, inversion, and so on. So all of these are now that they have been fully understood. We have gone ahead and done it. One could argue they could have done it a few months earlier or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, I'm glad that even those who are usually critics agree that these reforms need to be done, and they have been now done.
And why are these reforms being called a big bonanza, festive, package being given by the Prime Minister? Some are even saying that this is a time for celebration, it's landmark. Your own words are that this is next generation. What makes these reforms next generation reforms?
Well, whether you want to use celebratory terms to describe it or not is up to you. I'm just telling you as a technocrat that any such big reform, when you do a structural reform like introducing GST, you have to basically have at the back of your mind that over a period of time you will have to iterate it and make it better. So this is nothing surprising about it. Even at that time we had said we would do this. And indeed, into the far future, you will see future generations also tinkering with it. But at this juncture, what we have done, we have clearly lowered the burden of taxes for the vast majority of items. I don't think anybody will debate us on that. And, at a time where inflation anywhere is very well behaved, you are further lowering the pressure on prices. I think it's good. I mean, it provides lots of space for other kinds of macroeconomic measures that can be taken to keep the economy running on an even keel.
Several opposition rule states remain uncomfortable with these changes because their concerns are that they could lose revenue. The Revenue Secretary said that it's not about losses but revenue implications. Whatever terminology you may use, how do you respond to these apprehensions then?
See, these things are done iteratively all the time. Remember, this was passed through unanimously. So it's not like even those who have some reservations do not agree with the changes overall. However, if there are certain reservations, we will look into it and fix it along the way. So, if you lower taxes in general, of course, it does mean that at least in the first iteration, the collection of taxes will go down. However, over time, the idea is that the economy grows as a result of better efficiency and expanding the tax net, and that you benefit back from the simplification. Otherwise, this is true of every kind of tax simplification, not just this one.
And sir, do you see these GST reforms perhaps helping to offset or cushion the negative impact of the recent US tariff hikes on Indian exports?
Well, to some extent it could. Simplification is a good thing, but let me clarify that this is a part of our longer term agenda, and it's not being driven just because we have having certain turbulence in our tariffs vis-a-vis US or any other country for that matter. So this set of reforms would have been done anyway, but yes, it helps that it happens at a time when we may see a lot of turbulence on the external sector. So this helps as well. But by the way, let me also remind people that it's not just about the tax slabs. There are certain amount of process reforms that have also been introduced to simplify things. For example, there were repeated complaints that simply the registration itself was taking a lot of time. So the process reforms for that have also been simplified, and now some 97% estimated of registrations will happen within 3 days.
Okay, and the finance minister, when she was speaking about the rationalization of GST rates, said that this will have a positive impact on the GDP. What kind of impact is being calculated here?
It's difficult to put a number on this for obvious reasons, because the idea here is not so much the first order impacts, but the second order impacts of efficiency. Difficult to put a number on it, but longer term, simplification of taxes, lowering the tax burden, generally speaking, leads to a more efficient, productive economy, and that is the aim here. This was the aim even at the time the GST was introduced. There were all kinds of numbers about how exactly the economy will grow, but frankly, these things can't be modeled because there will be all kinds of complex impacts on the system. And by the way, we will continue monitoring this because it's not like there will not be other things that we can improve on.
So how big is the shift this is going to be?
I think it's a big shift, but it also needs to be seen in the wider context that GST is not the only thing the way we are doing reforms. There are a large number of process reforms that have also been promised by the Honorable Prime Minister. As you will know, a couple of committees have been formed on deregulation that will be looking into it, headed by Niti Aayog member Mr. Gauba, the former Cabinet Secretary. And there are other efforts too. So this has to be seen as a part of a much wider effort to up the game.
6 months ago, Mr. Sanyal, in the budget, there was that big announcement with regards to the tax cuts. And now we are seeing this. When the announcement was made by the finance minister, she spoke about the impact on several groups. And she spoke particularly in the context of the middle class, the farmers, and also the Aam Aadmi. Do you see this as continuity then?
Yes, and specifically in the case of the middle class that you mentioned, let me say that we are an aspirational society. We are talking of removing absolute poverty, and of course, we have seen that some, over 200 million people have been removed from absolute poverty in the last decade or so, and that that's not just our numbers. International agencies like World Bank and so on also have very high numbers of literally hundreds of millions of people moved out of poverty. Now, when you move them out of poverty, where do they go? They go into the middle class eventually. I mean, some eventually lower middle class, middle class, and so on. So, when you are dealing with an aspirational society, you also have to create the spaces for this class to grow into. So, what we are doing is first the income tax cuts up to zero tax till 12 lakhs. Now, with these measures, you're basically creating the space for the middle class to grow into this space. And, as for an aspirational society, that's exactly what you should be attempting to do.
As an economic historian, you often place today's policy in a wider frame, Mr. Sanyal. With the visuals we are seeing out of the SEO summit in Tianjin and multiple conversations which are happening about a new global economic order, where do you see India positioning itself in this clearly evolving landscape?
So we are an emerging world power. We are not there yet, but we are clearly emerging. We will be, in the next couple of years or so, becoming the world's third largest economy. We are the world's largest population. We are, at least at the regional level, a military power of some consequence. So what it does mean is that we need to begin to stand up for our interests. In the past, we had done this somewhat more apologetically, but as you may have seen, that we have stopped being apologetic about the matter. This does not mean that we will escalate matters with our trading partners or specifically with the US, but we will stand our ground. So if you see what we have done in the last few months, as this whole tariff issue has spiraled out, that we have not made sort of irresponsible statements. We have, by and large, been playing this very softly at one level, but at the same time we are standing up for our interests. So it's not like we are escalating things out, but it is also not the case that we are backing down.
So would you then say that the reason why the GST reforms were announced today, in fact last night, it comes into effect from 22nd of September, has to do with unpredictability, one would say, attached to the ongoing trade talks with the United States?
I don't think you can sort of link them one is to one. Fact of the matter is that, as I mentioned, as a rising global power, we now need to learn to stand up for our interests, and we are doing so. That requires us, of course, to build on our own economy. But do remember that, we should be investing back into our economy anyway to keep it going at a high rate of growth. The first quarter number came in at a very strong 7.8%, higher than I expected anyway. And so you have very good growth momentum, but you have to keep feeding that growth momentum. Otherwise, it will lose steam. So this is why it is important that we keep building our economic strength up, irrespective of what is happening externally. Now, of course, the coincidence that this happens at such a particular geopolitical juncture, you can read what you want into it. But I would say that we would have cleaned up and simplified and lowered the GST system, irrespective of this current external situation.
All right, Sanjeev Sanyal, economist, author, and member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. I appreciate your time joining us this morning and explaining the larger import and the thought behind the GST reforms.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you like the video, do like, comment, share, and subscribe.